Thank you very much, Milton. And definitely, it's a shame, I must say, that there seem to be different kinds of human beings that we're talking about here. The G7 leaders, and indeed all world leaders, need to understand that, you know, when we talk about human rights, we're talking about universal rights, and we cannot have different standards applied to Africa and different standards applied to other parts of the world. We cannot see, you know, them rise up, look at human rights situations in Russia, in other places, more seriously than they are. The people of Uganda and indeed the people of many African countries have been crying out. But, you know, the response has been very slow. It has been, you know, here and there. It has not been as robust. It has not been as concrete. What we continue to see is messages from people like the Prime Minister of Britain at some point congratulating Museveni towards his swearing in and looking forward to a call with him. This is a man who, as we all know, has abducted people in the lead up to the election. We saw, you know, so many people killed, people brutalized. As we speak, many of our comrades are still in safe houses, and I'm sure everyone understands that when we say safe houses in the Ugandan context, we are talking about torture chambers. You know, just last week, we saw 32 of our people who had been kept under illegal detention for more than a month, being produced before a military court, denied legal access to the lawyers, denied to them, and also, you know, remanded to Chitaria prison. So that is a situation we're talking about. Nubian Lee, Eddie Mutwe, Dan Magic, and many of our people have been kept now at Chitaria for more than 6 months without trial. And I mean, what we see is the world continuing to look at Uganda as, as if it's business as usual. We've done activism, we've tried to raise voices, we've tried to talk about this, but it's a shame, I must say, and I would appeal to world leaders, especially the G7, to really, you know, for lack of a better word, it looks as though it's racist to try and look at, you know, one section of people as deserving of human rights and another group of people as not deserving of human rights. What we're talking about are leaders who continue to support the Ugandan state, who continue to give it military aid. You've just talked about the IMF, which is considering a request of a lot of money to Uganda. With all the corruption that goes on here, and you know, you look at the Transparency International and all other bodies which have, you know, showed the kind of corruption that goes on in this country. Uganda's own Auditor General every year releases damning reports about the corruption situation, and yet we continue to see these countries turning the other side as if nothing is happening in this country. So I would really appeal to them to stop, you know, assisting a regime of blood and national shame.
All right, so now, David, this is the other question then. In terms of if there is an international, if there's a foreign government considering not supporting the regime with finances, but at the same time, trying to balance in not harming regular Ugandan citizens who deserve support, what advice are you giving them? What type of supports would be recommendable and what should not be supported?
We have made it very clear that, first of all the support should not go through the government of Uganda. And we are glad and grateful for some institutions which you know, are giving aid directly, and including some US programs which go directly to the communities, like USAID sometimes channels its support towards HIV directly to the health sector and not through the government of Uganda. So we are alive to the fact that, you know, there's a challenge, there's a balance to make. On one hand, even when the foreign aid is directed towards these, you know, independent or given directly to communities, then Museveni has enough money to, you know, spend on guns, to spend on ammunition, to spend on all these other things, crazy things that he does. But we don't want to affect the common people who are sometimes beneficiaries of this assistance. So we have made it clear that the support should not be extended to the government. And we know that a lot of money, for example, from America goes directly to the military here in Uganda. And we're saying that must and should stop, because be it the training, whatever is given to them in form of support, is used to repress the people of Uganda, and that should stop.
All right, so David, now in terms of the military support, it is clear that this regime has no respect for human rights, in fact, has been committing crimes against humanity, going on for 35 years now, and still getting the financial military support from the United States, including the training. Do you think, and would you say, the United States bears moral as well as legal responsibility for these atrocities being committed by the regime supported by the United States resources?
Definitely, they bear a moral responsibility. And I think it does not apply to the US only, it applies to all other countries which continue to hobnob with an outright dictatorship, a government which has no regard for human rights whatsoever. So I would certainly say they bear a moral responsibility, because, I mean, how on earth do you continue to work and to support a regime that has clearly showed you that they are not interested in human rights, and they will violate them with impunity? And you know, every once in a while they come up and say, to hell with the West. General Museveni has been on TV several times saying that. And on the other hand, they continue to work with these guys and to give them support, military aid, and all sorts of support. So certainly they bear a moral responsibility.
So in terms of, you know, in this country, change in the United States, which I'm very familiar with, and in many Western countries as well, change occurs after mass movements and mass protests. And I gave an example of the Black Lives Movement, for example, in the United States. And they tend to also gauge situations in other countries, including Uganda, by the level of mass protest that they see. They're not aware, in many cases, but some of course are, that in Uganda's situation, it is very different. The regime has not hesitated to shoot peaceful demonstrators with live bullets. And we saw that November 18, November 19, during the massacres when they protested the arrest of Bobby Wine. So given that type of paradox, or quandary rather, how can opposition, in fact, I hesitate to use the word opposition, and I'm going to ask you the next question about that, because people that won elections should not be referred to as opposition. But let's say, how can the people who are opposing the dictatorship communicate effectively while their hands are tied up in not being able to protest the way people in the West are used to observing and gauging the problems in other countries?
Yeah, first of all, we believe that the countries we're talking about, the Western countries, America, for example, through their embassy and indeed through all other channels, they're able to understand what goes on in Uganda. They know that although on our law books, Article 29 provides for a right to the citizens of Uganda to protest peacefully and unarmed, that in practice is not there. If you just go to the streets to protest, you'll be shot dead. And you know, we've tried it, we've seen it. People have just tried to gather. If people gather to, you know, hold a demonstration, in 2 minutes, the military will come in and they will shoot people. And if you are lucky, I mean, like people who are trying to protest about the rigging of the elections and all that, majority of them have not even been brought to court 5-6 months later, from January 14th up to now. So, I mean, I believe that platforms like this, and online protests like this, is an important tool. I just hope that the policymakers in Washington, D.C., the policymakers in Europe and all other countries are watching, and I hope they will just not stop at watching, but take some form of action, because ultimately we need to see that they don't use the double standards. I mean, people in Uganda may not be able to assemble as much as the people in Myanmar and indeed in other countries, because of the situation here on ground. But I think these countries should and must understand the circumstances and the dynamics. In the lead up to the election, after November 18th and 19th, we saw a crackdown like has not been seen before in this country. Thousands of young people were abducted, most of them picked from their homes in the dead of the night and taken to, you know, safe houses, many of them kept away from their families. And General Museveni came out and took responsibility for this. And he clearly said on TV that SFC was holding some of them. These are his guards. And, so it's very clear what is going on here. And I think the West does not need to first wait for, thousands of people to gather in the streets of Kampala to be able to take action.
Okay, now also remind some of the G7 leaders in the clearest terms possible how NUP actually won the elections. Remind them. I think that's important because when people start referring to NUP as the opposition, they might sometimes end up forgetting that in fact you're referring to the party that won the elections. So remind them of some of the clearest evidence.
Well, we've made it very clear that we won the January 14th election, and it was, despite all the efforts to rig and do all sorts of things. Before even I talk about winning, I should talk about the level of violence, and I need to tell them that what we had was really not an election, because we had our agents everywhere across the country arrested. We sent in supervisors, including our diaspora team leader, Haman Ainebuna, who was just picked up as soon as he arrived in Lira to deliver voting materials. And all across the country, our supervisors and polling agents were taken away. The country, of course, was put in a total blackout. The internet was switched off. Not just social media, but the entire internet infrastructure in the country was switched off. Radios were intimidated and ordered what to produce and what not to talk about. And some of them who defied and tried to do live coverages of what was going on were actually closed down. And so you had a situation where I cannot even say that there was an election. But when we were able to gather as many DR forms as we possibly could, we could see that substantially the results were in our favor. And when we did our computation, we found that we won an election with 54.19%. But General Museveni, of course, using the Electoral Commission, which he appoints, and the entire system, which is in control of, could not declare us. But even, we won this election even despite all manner of rigging that took place across the country. In the western part of the country and the northern part of the country, there was literally no voting. And so soldiers had access to polling stations. They would go, take all these voting materials away, critique all ballot papers or get critiqued ballot papers, put them in the ballot boxes, and in the evening, declare that they had won. Most of our people were gathering the DR forms and to bring them to us. And if you see our computation, it did not include several DR forms which were confiscated, because some of the people who were gathering these DR forms on behalf of NUP were arrested. Of course, the DR forms were taken out from them. We wrote to the police and the military, asked them to give these forms back to us, which were entitled to by the law, and some of our requests went unanswered too. So that is the situation that transpired on January 14th.
Right, so
Comrade Milton, thank you so much for taking us through this really insightful and informative discussion. We always, as a ritual in respect of our fallen comrades, we always observe a minute of silence for them, which we do at 3 o'clock. Now that Honourable David Lewis has just completed speaking, I'd like to ask everyone who's joined in before we proceed with this very, very important conversation and interview to respect and stay silent for 1 minute starting now, so that we can bear the souls of those who have departed for the struggle that we continue to fight right now. The 1 minute starts now. Thank you so much. May their souls rest in eternal peace. Thank you so much, Comrade Milton and Comrade David. Back to you.
Thank you. All right, so I think we have about 3 more minutes allotted, so I'll make it quick and just 3 quick questions. I'm sure not only Ugandans in Uganda and in diaspora, but the international community also, that may sympathize with the struggle and the victory of NUP, in fact, are thinking, what is next going forward? If the mission is to transition away from dictatorship and to unseat this military regime, what are some of the agenda items going forward? And can you address that briefly?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I'm really glad that we are honoring our comrades who are falling in these struggles. I continue to call upon you all comrades to pray for our friends. The gentleman whose t-shirt, who's on my picture now, is in hospital. It's called Achileo Chivumbi. He's also been part of the detainees at Chitalia, one of the political prisoners. In fact, he lost his father a few months back, and he was not able to go and even pay his last respects. And that speaks to the cost this whole persecution is having on our people. But of course, what we call upon the world, first of all, is not to legitimize an illegitimate regime, not to continue giving it assistance and propping it up in many ways, not to recognize it. And indeed, the US came out with a statement which clearly indicated that the election was not free and fair. And we do not want it to just be in rhetoric, we want to see it in action. We have also called for specific actions, and we are grateful for the sanctions, for the visa restrictions and that kind of thing. But we believe that more of this, we should see more of this. We want to see more sanctions under the Magnitsky Act, visa restrictions and asset freezes. Some of the people who are well known, who have been committing crimes against humanity, who have been abducting our people, who have been, clamping down, any sort of peaceful assembly. You remember very well when we tried to take a petition to the United Nations offices and the military came and completely crashed down on journalists and all other people who had gathered there. So we want to see the world taking strong action, and indeed to make it clear that the rights which are applicable to other parts of the world, Europe and the West generally, must equally be applicable to Africans. So we want to see more action. We think the reason why General Museveni and indeed many dictators stay in power is because of the support, direct or indirect, which they receive from nations of the world. And so we want General Museveni and his illegitimate regime to be isolated so that the people of Uganda have an opportunity to speak and be heard, and therefore able to reclaim the victory which the people of Uganda gave to NUP and to their leader, Honorable Robert Amsterdam.
All right, so our time is exhausted, so I'll just make this as the final question. In Romania in 1989, when the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, who had committed gross human rights violations for many years, when he was being tried by the tribunal, they actually said not even his worst crimes was all the killings and the destruction of families that he did, but they said the worst crime he had committed was to kill hope in Romania. With NUP's really outstanding performance in the campaign and the massive support that people showed by coming out and then voting, do you think hope has been restored in Uganda? And you yourself, are you hopeful that change will happen, and preferably not 5 years from today, as the dictator would prefer? I'm sure he would prefer to continue with this illegitimate regime until the next election. So that's the question. Are you hopeful? And if you are, then tell us why you have hope. And that would be my final question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I must admit that there are days in the past when it all looked bleak. But we are reminded that, there have been worse dictators than Museveni. And, there are many recent examples on the African continent. People who seemed, unmovable, people who seemed, firm in their dictatorship. And, if you look at Gaddafi, look at Hussein Mubarak, al-Bashir, and all these other dictators who ravaged countries and caused incredible pain on the citizens. And indeed, the citizens in those countries, in some cases, lost hope. But I want to say that we are hopeful, we are optimistic. We know that the task ahead is really, really difficult, and it's you know, there are many times which are very depressing when you look at every day when you receive calls of who are abducted, more people are abducted, and then the dictator, after abducting some of them, tries to buy them and to pay them so that they begin working for him and that kind of thing. But I think we have every reason to hope. We have every reason to continue struggling until we see change in our country, because in any case, do we have any alternative? Because every day that General Museveni spends in power is more corruption, more poverty on our people, more repression, more human rights abuses, and all other such evils. So we have no option but to remain hopeful and to continue working for change in our country.
All right, thank you, David, very much. And we wish you the best in the resistance. And of course, we are committed in supporting the resistance as well. Thank you. Back to you, Nico.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Milton. Also, please stay around for the interview with Matthias and Puga. And David, I would like to ask you if you have a couple of minutes for a question from the audience.
Okay, maybe 2 more minutes, because like I said, I had another meeting coming up, but I can stay on and take 1 or 2 questions.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, there is a question by Linek. He is saying, thanks, Secretary General. My question is that let us be informed on any funding institution that is able to fund Dictator Museveni, such that we storm it earlier before it approves their request. We use the Twitter army. We are ready to defend and fight against anyone trying to fund Museveni. In short, there are many Twitter volunteers available to support the struggle online. What do you think about that?
Certainly, you know, a lot of times we don't get this information, but when we get this information, we'll put it out there. And I really appreciate the people, the Ugandans on Twitter, and of course, the friends of Uganda who are continuing to push very hard on Twitter, on Facebook, and all other channels. And indeed, as and when we know that, you know, the international community is giving funds to Uganda, we'll make this information available. Of course, like I've said, we've been victims of a lot of cyber attacks. You notice that our official Twitter accounts were attacked by the government. The Facebook page was hacked into. Our website, the moment we started uploading evidence of voter fraud, of the fraud that happened during the election, our website was attacked and put down. So this is what we're talking about. But now we're trying to restore these sites, hopefully with more security features, and then we'll be able to share all this information with the world.
Yeah, by the way, it's really good that the noob_UG account is online again. So let's use that in the struggle. And as you know, the diaspora have at this moment like 6 or 7 accounts. So maybe you can also ask our comrades with noob_UG if they can connect to the diaspora accounts. I have one final question from Herbert. He is asking, what measure do you have put in place to accelerate the demand for our comrades in prison, and also demand that IMF and World Bank stops funding the Museveni regime?
Yeah. First of all, what we've tried to do, we've tried all legal avenues to try and get our people out of prison. Like I said, the tragedy is that even while we're trying to get the comrades out of prison, more are being sent there. Just last week, we had 32 more people being sent to prison, having been under illegal detention, and they appeared in court with the clear marks of torture. Myself, other NUP leaders and lawyers were all prevented from going to court. Remember that myself, Honorable Chagulanyi, Joel Senyonyi, and other leaders are not allowed to visit these comrades in prison. We were banned because we came out and talked about the conditions in prison, and then the government said we are no longer going to be allowed to visit these people in prison. So this is the situation, but we've tried all legal avenues, including we went to the High Court. The High Court, you know, said this matter is before another court, military court, and therefore we're not able to interfere. We went to the Constitutional Court. We've been waiting for a date. We've not been able to get one. We've gone to the General Court Martial, applied for bail, and continue to do that. So these are some of the efforts we're trying to put in place. But of course, we believe that we should even look at other international bodies. And that's why we filed a complaint with the ICC, why we've gone to the East African Court of Justice, and all other avenues, legal and otherwise, that we are trying to use. But we believe that legal avenues are not enough. And such a protest is a clear and important strategy in trying to get freedom for our people who are under illegal detention.
Okay, thank you so much for the time that you have created to talk to us. People in the chat are very happy that you joined. So thank you very much for all you're doing for the struggle.
Thank you very much.
I want to give it back to you, David.
Thank you so much, Nico, and thank you to our guest speaker for this session, Comrade David Lewis. Thank you so much for the very informative and encouraging words from yourself. You guys are at the front line. We know how hard it is. Anything we can do to support is definitely something we're keen to do. And thank you, of course, Comrade Milton, for taking us through those questions. I believe we have another guest who we'll be expecting at some point. So please hang around, because we'd love you to use the opportunity to send questions through. Just before we go through and pick up, we're just about to pick up a few hands so that we can give those of you who are attending this protest the opportunity to speak. I'd like to invite, can I just ask that if you would like to speak and you've got your hands up, please give us a proper name that we can address you by, rather than a phone name. That way we can address you civilly. So I'll avoid any names that I can't pronounce, that are not normal sounding names. So Umaya, you have your hands up. Thank you for joining us.
Abuses. And I think the fact that that precedent has been set with respect to...
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, no worries. Yeah. Thank you.
But thank you so much for those great ideas that you've pointed out. How can we augment our reach? How can we leverage those that have a deeper followers, especially with maybe the secretariat, the principal, and others, and also be creative around galvanizing different sectors of our population through comedy, music, and stuff like that. So those are really good, well thought out suggestions that we can keep building on as we move forward. Thank you so much. We appreciate your input. So at this time, I would like to recognize one of our guest speakers. We have Attorney Robert Amsterdam. I saw that he joined. I would like to see if we can unmute him. Robert, are you able to unmute yourself so we can give you a platform to address?
I think I believe
yes,
I have.
Thank you. Great. Good to see you. Thank you for finding time to join us. This is the G7 online and physical demonstration that you gracefully accepted to be part. And we appreciate that every time we call on you, you find time to give us your thoughts and a piece of encouragement and advice as needed. So I would like to give you maybe 10 minutes to address us. If you can briefly introduce yourself for the audience who may not be familiar with you, as well as help us focus how this event is important and how we can best connect our message to this G7 leadership.
Well, my name's Robert Amsterdam, and I'm very proud to be a good friend and occasional lawyer to Mr. Bobby Wine, and first worked for Bobby when he was illegally arrested and tortured in Arua, and became very committed to him and his cause since that time. And we were, I think it's important to note, we were successful at having a number of those people who tortured him banned from entry into the United States. And now they are subject to what's called the Magnitsky list, people who are engaged in human rights abuses. And I think the fact that that precedent has been set with respect to Uganda should bar Uganda from receiving military equipment. And I don't think that's happened yet, but that's a very important aspect in terms of the G7. What the G7 need to understand more than anything else is that Museveni is not a pillar of stability in Africa. He is a pillar of instability, because outside of the horror, the terror, the murders, the kidnappings, and the gruesome crimes of violence against his own people, the Museveni government has been an extortionate rapist of the neighbors of Uganda. It is documented with respect to what this government did in South Sudan, what this government did in the DRC, what this government continues to do against its neighbors and its own people. And this idea that somehow is within the G7 that this government provides stability is absolutely wrong. And like so much about what the West does in Africa, we are dealing with a fundamental misunderstanding. And the other fact is that the West, if a leader is Black in Africa now, that's about all they have to pass in order to obtain donor money and all the money they need to condemn their own people to the horrific conditions we're seeing in Uganda. And I have written and said many times that Uganda is a case of internal colonialism. Museveni and his son and the son's torture squad that engage in the persecution and beatings of Ugandans and murder of Ugandans, these people believe that Uganda exists as a colony to be exploited for them. And I will tell you that thank God we have people like Helen Epstein, Jeffrey Smith, this new lawyer from the States, Bruce, who has done some great work in getting out the message to the West, to the US, to the Black Caucus in Congress, that this behavior is antithetical to any idea of Western values. And I think the other point to make is that the silence of the African Union is completely unacceptable. The world stands united in condemning China in terms of the Uyghurs, and I take nothing away from that titanic struggle, but I would say to you that the silence with respect to Uganda and the silence of the African Union to say anything with respect about Museveni or a lot of the goings on in East Africa is unforgivable. And one of the important things Ugandans need to do is unite with opposition groups in other African states. I work for the opposition in Tanzania and Cameroon, and unite with those opposition groups to get the largest voice possible in the world community to educate the world about what's happening in Africa, what's being allowed to happen in Africa. And now that Europe has adopted the Magnitsky Act, we need to make sure that Ugandans in all of these countries push for a resolution before the European Parliament to condemn the leaders of Uganda, place them on the Magnitsky list, and ensure that they stop operating with impunity. And that's something that has to be done because it's clear Ugandans can't breathe. And one of the things we should be doing is talking to American activists like Black Lives Matter. We've already had a statement from a major American organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, supporting the opposition in Uganda against the tyranny of Museveni. And, you know, I was horrified that 21 African heads of state attended this complete farce of an inauguration that occurred weeks ago in Kampala. I think that every leader who attended should be condemned for attempting to legitimize that farce. So I wanted to just say how proud I am to be part of this group. I think it's incredibly important that Ugandans in the diaspora set up 24/7 protests in front of the Ugandan embassies and make sure that Ugandan voices in the diaspora are heard loud and clear in terms of ending this brutal dictatorship. So thank you very, very much for allowing me to have a few minutes here to speak.
Thank you so much for giving us your thoughts and also providing us with some additional direction, which I think helps us reflect on what else we can do, what we haven't done, what can we do better. I heard you mention that we can also capitalize on our strength as Africans and build those coalitions across countries to put more pressure and have a larger voice and push for.
And Grace, we have the most charismatic leader in Africa. Bobi Wine is the leader of Africa's youth, which constitutes 70% of the demographics of the continent. We have a great leader. We have a heroic leader in Bobi Wine. As somebody I'm so proud to call a personal friend. And I think we have to pray for him and just pray that he becomes president and does what I know he wants to do for the people of Uganda.
Okay. Thank you. So let me see if we have a couple of questions at least before we get in to our next invited guests. But we have, I think I would like to have Milton, Professor Milton Alimadi. You have a question for Robert. Would you please unmute and ask the question? And then after that, I would ask Nico, Professor Nico, to also ask a clarifying question. So let's get through to Milton first.
All right. Thank you, first of all, for your wonderful job co-hosting rather. A question to Robert Amsterdam. First of all, thanks for that wonderful presentation and summary of the state of affairs. And I agree with you in terms of getting more US activists involved. And I think I can actually get some people from Black Lives Matter for the next protest. My question to you, the Alien Torts Act, is that a law that would be helpful in some of the cases in Uganda in terms of trying to associate American individuals or entities with some of the crimes committed by General Museveni in Uganda?
To be very frank, it's an excellent question, but I think that the Alien Tort Act would be much less effective than if we had anyone who is an American citizen picked up by any of the drones, because under some new US law, we might be able to then declare Museveni part of a terrorist organization. So if any of the people who have been illegally arrested, which includes people that I consider brothers and sisters of mine, if any of those people have American citizenship, that would be the gateway to launching some very inventive litigation under some new anti-terrorism laws that have been put into the United States. We have experience with the Alien Tort Claims Act, and the problem is it's been greatly restricted by some recent judicial decisions, and it takes so much time to get these cases heard that I wouldn't call it a particularly fruitful avenue.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And let me request Professor Nico, you had a question you thought could be clarified. Would you please ask that clarifying question?
Yes, Robert, thank you for your contribution. So you mentioned it's important that the European Parliament takes on a firm stance against the dictator. Now, in February, they already had quite a firm resolution, and I'm not totally sure, but even Magnitsky sanctions might have been mentioned in that in that resolution. So could you please clarify your what they should be adding to their position? And then secondly, of all the parliaments in the West, the European Parliament is one of the weakest. MPs in European Parliament have been telling me that we need to get to Paris and Berlin because there are the most important leaders. How can we achieve that?
Well, look, I've been to Berlin with Bobby, and one of my staff has been to Paris with him. And I think he was a big hit in both capitals. I think that the EU now has the mechanism to engage directly with individuals. And what the EU would need would be to identify the individuals who should be added to the Magnitsky Act with enough detail so that the actual procedures could be followed. And, you know, in terms of the Bundestag in Germany, I think that, I don't know if you saw the reports that the German army were talking to the Ugandan army just a couple of weeks ago. But there's a lot of work that has to be done in Berlin to educate our German friends about what's really been happening. And, you know, that's going to take a lot of effort on behalf of the NUP and Ugandans in the German diaspora to speak to their representatives in the political parties and put some pressure on the army and develop some pressure in terms of sanctions relative to Uganda.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. I have we have several people with hands up, but I think that we will not take all these now because we have another speaker waiting,
Sure.
and then we'll get back to these questions. So I do have a specific question though for clarification. One of the individuals from the audience wants to hear you tell us a little bit more about what is encompassed in the Harare Declaration. I think you mentioned something to that effect. What is, can you tell us a little bit more?
Well, in fact, that's a brilliant question because I didn't mention it today, but I mentioned it in a prior discussion. The Harare Declaration, and I want to thank this person for this question because I should have mentioned it earlier. The Harare Declaration is a declaration signed by Uganda and other countries in the Commonwealth that commit Uganda to freedom of expression, freedom of the press, and many democratic principles that Museveni is derogated from. We should work hard to expel Uganda from the Commonwealth. This is an attainable goal, and it should be a focus of all of us in the diaspora to present a brief to the Commonwealth and get Uganda suspended, because that would delegitimize the junta in Kampala, and it would do a tremendous amount to force African institutions like the AU to do something. So thank you for the mention of the Harare Declaration. I think it's a very important issue that we should be pushing.
Thank you for providing us with those that insights and for your time. I would like to, I would have had a follow-up question on that, but I think in the interest of time, I would want to invite another guest, and then then we'll be able to get back to some questions here from the audience. I think, Robert, if you have time, you're welcome to stay on and then listen to our next invited speaker. I do, Professor Nico, I want to invite MP Silvana Simmons. Is she ready?
Okay, let's ask her if she can be unmuted. Now, one of us has to hit that button to unmute her.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for her.
I am unmuted now.
Yes, thank you so much. What a wonderful way of meeting, and thank you for gracing us with your time. So
thank you so much for the invitation.
You are so welcome. And we really, really appreciate you carving out time to be with us. This is a community of Ugandans in the diaspora. We do have some that are in Uganda. We've been here for 2 hours so far. I think we are closing to our 3rd hour, ending our 3rd hour, which you are presenting. So we appreciate. To the audience, we are so glad and appreciate the presence of Ms. Silvana Simmons. She's an MP in the Dutch Parliament. I would like to invite you to give us a brief background of yourself, and then we can get on from there. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chibunika. Well, I started my political career only recently, about 5 years ago, after a very successful career in media and entertainment as a television host, DJ, dancer, actress, and among those spheres. I was prompted to get into politics because I reached a point where I could no longer deal with the institutional unfairness, discrimination, and racism in my country, the Netherlands, a country known very much as the most tolerant and accepting, but I'm here to tell you that I'm afraid is a farce. It's only a skin deep image that does not have its effect truly and well within Dutch society. I've entered Parliament last March as the first Black party leader, and of course also the first female Black party leader in this country, as I'm a descendant of a former Dutch colony, Suriname, located in South America. It used to be known as Dutch Guyana. And I came here as a young child, lived here all my life. And I think this is the briefest I can give you about my career so far and how I ended up in the Dutch Parliament after I founded my party in the end of 2016, December. We also hold a seat in the municipality of Amsterdam, and we are ready to enter local elections next year with at least, I hope, 4 to 5 cities in the Netherlands. I have had the pleasure of meeting Lina Zedriga a few weeks ago online, and have heard from her about the current situation in Uganda, as I have to tell you that we do not get a lot of news about the Ugandan situation here in the Netherlands. If I hadn't followed Mr. Bobi Wine on Twitter, I would not have known anything. This is just to give you an idea. And also in regards to the previous speaker, Mr. Amsterdam, who I would like to thank so much for his contribution. I think that one of the other important things is to get this in the media across Europe. So it will make at least my work as an MP a little bit easier to get the attention for everything that's going on in Uganda, and also question the authorities right now in the part that they are playing as Dutch government.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that brief and informative background. I did not quite get the name of your party, the one you founded. It's the Black Dutch Party?
It's called Bijeen, which means together. As you can see, I have one of our election posters in the back. This is the Dutch way of writing it, Bijeen, and it translates easier to come together. I started my party under a different name. It used to be Article 1. After the first article of our constitution, I was legally forced to change the name, but I think that Bijeen, coming together, really represents our ideals very well, because it is our aim to get rid, obviously, of any type of discrimination. We are a party of emancipators, so our aim is to bring everybody together.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that additional information and insight in your political background. And I wanted to find out, we are here to really express the injustices and the oppression, repressive 35-year regime that actually goes back. The individual Museveni has participated in governments prior to him securing the presidency for more than 40 years. And we are at a crossroad where we've had some gains as a young party. And like Robert mentioned, our party represents the majority of Ugandans who are youth, as well as a reflection of the population in Africa, which is a young continent, really. So how would you guide us in addressing our issues to the G7, which is why we are demonstrating today, to put more attention on the plight and the issues that pertain to Uganda at the forefront of these so-called democracies?
Well, I can only start by saying that I support every word spoken by Mr. Robert Amsterdam, because I think that one of the more important messages that he's trying to give us is to unite. I think this is something that we should not underestimate. And also, as he said, uniting not only within Uganda with different groups of activists, but also outside of the country, in the neighboring countries, and gets the story across to global media, global networks. What I found very powerful for Bijeen is we are also, just like NUP, a young party struggling for the right type of attention, because attention is never far, but it's about getting the right type of attention, is uniting with different groups. We also always invite and explain to people that the struggle for the climate is the same struggle. It's a struggle for justice. When it comes to feminist rights, it's the same struggle. It's the struggle for justice. So uniting different groups is very, very important, we have found, in getting the masses, which will eventually hopefully lead to getting that attention of the issues at hand. Now, I think that you are already making such big steps in not only getting the story heard, but uniting. I can see there's a lot of people present here today. You have already found your way to addressing the G7, for instance. So I think that one of the most important things is to keep going. And like you said, there's a window now, and it's very important to make sure it's open and it stays open.
Great. So I would like to, with those words, I would like to find out if there are people who have specific questions for you. We do have our demonstration also relies on people bringing in thoughts and having space where they can express. But I would like to invite a few questions where we can hear from the audience that may have specific questions for you. Comrade Nico, yes. Are you able to take on this question period with MP Silvana?
Yes, sure, Madam Grace. Thank you very much for doing this interview. Now, there are many hands up, and I'm not even sure if probably those hands are not all for Silvana Simmons. So I would like anyone that has a question for Silvana Simmons and to put it in the chat. And as I speak, Michael Kirkpatrick has the first question. So other people also add your question to the chat, and I'm going to ask to unmute Michael Kirkpatrick. Michael, please ask Silvana your question.
Thank you very much, Nico. Silvana, thank you. It's always a pleasure to meet somebody new who is aware of all these issues and who has a professional role in a government that's listening to Ugandans. This question, I'm hoping Robert Amsterdam is still with us here. I didn't get a chance to look around the room, but also for Silvana, since you are a member of the Dutch Parliament and you know the workings of politics and you know the workings of the European Union, my question specifically is about the International Criminal Court. Somebody is running interference with the International Criminal Court because for years there have been these atrocities and these issues documented by people like the Human Rights Watch, by Amnesty International, and they've been submitted to the ICC. We know about atrocities that have been prosecuted by the ICC regarding the Lord's Resistance Army and Joseph Kony. They have been told that Museveni is also responsible for atrocities and also for passing off atrocities that his army, the UDPF, has committed and passing them off as LRA atrocities. So the ICC is aware of these, of Museveni and what he's doing. Somebody's running interference. Who do you think is running interference? And question two is, what can we do to put pressure on the ICC?
Wow, thank you so much for these questions. Let me start by saying that I have a very depressing answer for you because your guess is as good as mine. I really could not tell you. It's obvious that what you're stating is true, but as to the reasons why, I could not tell you. I am actually appalled and surprised by answers given to our Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs when asked about Dutch financial support and also material support to Uganda government being used for all the wrong reasons, being used by the government to suppress opposition. And the answers puzzle me just the way they would puzzle you. So I don't know. The pressure that we can keep putting is, I have to tell you, my instruments as an MP are limited because I can ask questions and then I can ask questions again. And if need be, I will ask questions every single day. But I also need the same force that you are looking for in uniting different activist groups and different, is the same force I need to be able to get them to really answer those questions. Now, even though I do not know the answer, I'm prejudiced enough to say that the answer is always money. So we need to find out what money, who's it from, where's it coming from, and what is it being spent on, and how is it being allocated. So I'm sorry to say that I do not have a specific answer, but I think that this is the question we need to keep asking, and until we find out. About ICC, by the way, it's located in the Netherlands. It's located in The Hague, the same city as our parliament, and it's the same city I work in every day. But for obvious reasons, Dutch parliament, Dutch government is not connected to the ICC. This is healthy, in a healthy democracy, but at the same time, it's also the perfect excuse for the answer being, this is not our business. We don't know. We have nothing to do with that. they are an independent institution. So I'm very much willing to look into that further and keep asking those questions. But something that's very important for me as an MP to be able to do my work is I need to be informed. So I'm always asking everybody, inform me, send me anything you know. I might not always be able to respond or engage in conversation or meetings, but I will use this information to keep the pressure going.
Okay, thank you. And my question was more of a rhetorical question for the benefit of everybody in this room and watching on Facebook, so that they know that there is a global official institution that can address these things and is aware of them. And we've already proven that online pressure through Twitter or whatever means is effective, but also we've seen demonstrations in Washington, D.C. interrupt some of the public relations firms that have backed off representing the Ugandan regime. We've seen demonstrations in London. We've seen demonstrations in the Netherlands on the ground. And of course, today we see a demonstration in Cornwall with the G7. So I put the proposal out there for our folks in the Netherlands. You know where the building is, you know where the ICC is. That may be one of our next, strong demonstrations. The group that went to Rotterdam for the music competition, maybe that same group just pops up in front of the ICC on a busy day when maybe we know there's a...
Well, I mean, coming to The Hague and protesting in front of the Tweede Kamer, which is our parliament building, is really always a good idea, especially, and this might be just very simple, especially if you make sure that you write every single MP, email them on the daily, and make sure they come out and accept your petition. By then, they usually feel obligated to investigate, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of my colleagues in chamber do not know. They simply do not know. So another thing, and it might sound silly or petty, is when it came to the Palestinian cause, all I did was wear a pin into Parliament, and this caused a lot of commotion. So these are simple ways in which we can get the attention, but we need to get media. This is the only way it works.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Silvana. So I have a final question. It connects a little bit to this subject, because obviously, because I'm Dutch myself, I know that you're quite experienced with activism as well. So the National Unity Platform is also going into an activist phase after the dictator stole the elections. So from your experience with activism, what recommendations do you have for us?
Well, one of the things we found very powerful in the Netherlands, but also internationally, is simultaneous action. So when there is a demonstration in one city, let there be demonstrations in another city at the same time. So this is also, I think, what Mr. Amsterdam was talking about, and I'm sorry, even the speaker before that, who gave great ideas about incorporating all kinds of media and entertainment. Radio, I know, on the African continent is very important and very powerful. So any given instrument, any given tool should be used, but we need to organize. So for instance, from my point of view as a Dutch MP, I would like to hear from Ugandans in the diaspora here in the Netherlands and see how we can combine forces, because we are also, I dare say, affiliated with Black Lives Matter. With we have the Black Archives and the NUC here in the Netherlands. So it really comes down to combining the forces and make sure that whatever action is being taken in location A is also happening in location B. And we live in a world right now where it's relatively easy to be connected, stay connected, and make sure that when there's a demonstration in France, let there also be one in the Netherlands, let there also be one in the UK and every other country where the diaspora has landed, because that's the type of force we need, because that's what's going to help us to get media attention globally, and that's what's going to help us to get to raise political pressure and hopefully move from there.
Yes, that is very good recommendation. So I find it very nice that you as a politician have come to this Zoom call and this demonstration, because many politicians are a bit hesitant. They are like, oh, let me stay neutral. Let me not do this.
Well, I think that is the problem. And I think that this is also what connects by AIM and NUP, is that we are not scared about nothing. And we cannot afford to be scared, because we have serious rights to defend. I will always be present when it comes down to fighting oppression, fighting injustice, and especially I love, even though it's a sad term, but I'm very happy that today I have been introduced to the word internal colonialism, because fighting colonialism and decolonizing every single part of our society on a global scale, obviously for me starting in the Netherlands, this is my partner's mission. So I will be glad to help, support, and join whenever, wherever. And I know that Professor Nico and I, we are both in the Netherlands, and we have already agreed that this summer we will spend some time on talking to each other about how we can join forces, combine forces and knowledge in order to get the Ugandan case forward.
Okay, thank you so much, Silvana, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much. Can I just say one last word as I leave again, because I have other obligations as well, but I just want to say that even being in this room today gives me a lot of positive energy and a lot of hope that in due time, because as activists, we must never expect the solution to come quick. So we always need to understand that our struggles are that are going to take the most time, but knowing that we are not alone and that we are globally all fighting for justice, it really warms my heart. And I wish you all the strength and wisdom you need.
In Uganda, we say "aluta continua."
Aluta?
Aluta continua. The struggle continues. Thank you so much.
Comrade Nico, I think Comrade Milton had something to add. Milton, over to you.
Yeah, it's not so much a question, but first I want to thank MP Silvana for her presentation. I wanted to follow up on the question that Michael asked, and it's an important question that I think we resuscitate, and here's why it's important. He asked about somebody blocking for Museveni at the ICC. It is completely true. There's a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. I'm trying to look it up. If I find it while I'm still on, I will share it. It was from June the 8th, 2006. And that article was very interesting. It was an interview with some of the prosecutors at the ICC. And those prosecutors said they were stunned when the chief prosecutor, Luis Moreno Ocampo, posed together for a photograph with General Museveni. Museveni had just convinced the ICC to pursue the Joseph Kony matter, and the ICC agreed. And then Museveni posed with Ocampo, the prosecutor, for a PR photograph. And the other prosecutors said they were stunned and they were aghast. They didn't want that to happen. And why was that? They said because the ICJ, International Court of Justice, had already awarded Congo damages and reparations for the war crimes committed by Uganda's army in the Congo. And the ICC was about to launch its own investigation of those same crimes, meaning Museveni could possibly be indicted. So why was Ocampo posing together with him for a photograph? And then the article had one other very interesting item. The article said Museveni himself called Kofi Annan, who at the time was the Secretary General of the UN, and asked him to block the criminal investigation. And Kofi Annan told him, I do not have the powers to block the investigation. But it seems that since Museveni was never indicted, somebody who had the powers blocked those investigations. And I think the usual suspects, of course, would be the United States or Great Britain. They're the only ones that have the veto power in the UN to block that investigation. So Michael, your question was really on point, and they're actually concrete facts that indeed the investigation was blocked. So I just wanted to add that to Michael's question.
And I'm showing the picture right here, Milton.
Yes, there you go, Ocampo with Museveni. And if I find the Wall Street Journal article about what I just described, I will share it also.
Thank you so much for that observation.
Thank you.
David, is there anything else, or otherwise I will try to find our next moderator. That is Patricia Namyalo. Don't know if she's already on.
Yes, Nico, we have a few tweets that we'd like to share with comrades before we move on to Patricia. And first of all, I'd like to say again, as everyone has expressed, thank you to Honourable Silvana for taking the time to grace us with her presence and giving us really good tips about engaging more and engaging in depth with some of these political leaders. Thank you so much to her, and obviously to you, Nico, for managing to arrange for her to address us here on Zoom and on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, this wouldn't be an online protest without us sending out tweets. We always meet here every Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. and today, because it's a G7 special session, we are doing an extended session. And what we would like you to do is join us and get involved in Twitter bombing. If you haven't signed up to Twitter, please can you take the next few minutes to get yourself signed up. Those of you who are on Twitter, can I ask you to follow our handle, just so that we can take this process very nicely and swiftly. Please head over to twitter.com or your Twitter app and follow @StandUpUganda. That is the official handle of the team that organizes these protests. And we have a number of preset tweets that we would like you guys to get involved in. Thank you so much for all those of you who are following us on Facebook. For those of you who are following us on the chat, we will be sharing the screen so that you can see the tweets we would like you to send out today. So it would be good to see the numbers of people following @StandUpUganda increasing, because we've got that live here. So please head over to @StandUpUganda. So that is @StandUpUganda on Twitter, and you will see a red cover page with Ditch the Dictator and a fist on the profile page. Okay, I'm just about to head over to the first tweet that we would like you to tweet. And those of you who may have heard, there's been a lot of activity, and there's always very, very big activity around specific topics of interest. Of course, we're talking about G7, we're talking about the IMF funding, we're talking about the billions of dollars that governments are looking to lend Uganda or organizations. We need to put a stop to this. So please, I'm going to share my screen so that we can get you engaged and involved in this Twitter bombing session, and so that we can get the tweets sent over to the people involved and concerned. So the first tweet I'd like us to share. Sorry, let me just get this shared. Right, so if you're following Stand Up Uganda, you should see a tweet that we have sent to the G7 countries about funding. This is a call, and it's got very key hashtags. We've got SOS, like Comrade Andrew talked about earlier. We're using that as a hashtag. We're using Uganda is bleeding, and we've got this held off to key handles, European Parliament, Canada, UK in Uganda, and we've got all those tagged in for you. So please, if you're on our handle, we would like to see that number. We have got 14 retweets. Please, can we see that number increase? We would like you to head over to that page and go on and copy that link, retweet it, quote it, love that, give us a share, give us a heart. We want to see that tweet being amplified by the number of people who are on the Zoom, and those of you who are following us on Facebook. This is how we have been able to engage directly with Mercury, with the people who are organizing the Mama Africa Awards. This is exactly how we are engaging them. So do not think that what you're doing is insignificant. Please, every retweet, every share, every quote, every comment amplifies the message to the G7. So I'd love to see all of you heading over and getting this tweet. So I've got the link now, and we will share it. Normally, my comrade Michael Kirkpatrick is a lot quicker than me, so I'm not sure if he's already shared it on the Zoom stream. But please, we should have the link available very soon, and we will be able to send it to the Zoom chat, if someone can post it on the Zoom chat, so that we can share that message. So that's the first message that's the first tweet we would like to see. So good to see the numbers. That's 23. There's 128 people on this Zoom chat. I would love to see at least that number moving up to 100. Otherwise, we are not doing ourselves justice. When you hear about action, when you hear about people standing together, we're talking about these small steps. So let's see those hearts and those retweets go up. If you haven't followed at Stand Up Uganda, now is the time to follow Stand Up Uganda, because this is where all the messaging is going to go. Okay, I'm reliably informed that we have had a new tweet come up that has been set up that we would like to get sent through, and that's directly to the IMF about the nearly $1 billion that they're looking to lend Uganda. Okay, here we go. So this is a very new tweet that we have for you with an appropriate video that has been uploaded by our Twitter colleagues. So this tweet that you should be able to see says, at IMF Live, Museveni has weapons of mass destruction, working with China and North Korea. Stop funding a murderous regime. We tag at USA Gov, at IMF in EU, World Bank, and a number of other handles. Please head over to at Stand Up Uganda, and that is the tweet we want you, the second tweet we want you to go like, retweet, share, add your comment to it. We cannot have an unaccountable, illegitimate regime getting all this money, because we know where that money is going to be diverted to. So every single retweet, quote, comment, share is going to make a difference. Okay, so it's good to see the numbers going up. Let's get that message. Those of you who are on Facebook, head over to our Twitter and follow at Stand Up Uganda. We need to see those retweets getting close to the number of people. There are hundreds of you watching us on Facebook. Please, please, please head over to at Stand Up Uganda on Twitter, and let's get those tweets amplified. Let's get that message sent out to the world that we are not going to keep quiet. I'm getting a lot of information sent into me so that we can ensure that we've got the latest information out for you. Okay, one more tweet that we have. We've got 3 for you today, but if you would like to retweet and send any additional tweets, do not hesitate to follow us on at Stand Up Uganda, and you will find our tweets there that you can share. Right, this is the next one we want you to focus on. This is all about the torture, abduction, rape, and murder. Our comrades are languishing in jails and prisons right across the country. We have to stand up. We have to raise our voices. There's so many people we've spoken to today who did not know anything about the atrocities the regime is causing in Uganda. If we do not speak, our comrades will definitely not see the light of day. Ladies and gentlemen, head over to at Stand Up Uganda, and I'd love to see that tweet amplified just as much as you've amplified the other tweets.